Hello and welcome to Farm Journal Live. I'm editor Clint Griffiths here in the Farm Journal newsroom in northern Indiana as we continue to update you on the latest happening with regards to the coronavirus outbreak and its impacts on agriculture. We get straight to the headlines today. The situation getting bad for farms out there as Tyson idles its largest pork plant. Tyson Fresh Meats indefinitely suspending operations at its Waterloo, Iowa plant this week. That plant processes about 19,500 hogs per day. That's about 4% of the entire U.S. pork processing capacity. And it is the latest in a string of pork and beef processing plants impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. You can see as we continue to get reaction from around the country, the president of Tyson Fresh Meats saying, quote, "Despite our continued efforts to keep our people safe while fulfilling our critical role of feeding American families, the combination of worker absenteeism, COVID-19 cases, and community concerns has resulted in our decision to stop production." Let's go ahead and bring in AgriTalk's Chip Flory. And Chip, you live in that part of the country there in Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
This is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. This is a huge deal. This is this for the first time, and I know how important the Sioux Falls plant was, and John can talk about this too more. I know how important the Sioux Falls plant is, the CJ plant, but when it gets right into your backyard, you start to understand just how it could impact the supply situation out there. It's not just the number of illnesses at the Waterloo plant are significant. There's no question about that.
Sure.
The steps that have been taken by Tyson to do what they can to assure the well-being of those workers, I think, have been impressive. They've made a lot of changes in a short period of time. Some of the plexiglass separate dividers on the line, they've been trying to add some space. But the conversation in the community around what is happening in that plant, some of the fears about going to work have been fanned by the Black Hawk County Sheriff, Clinton. And it's a situation, it's one of the strangest situations that I've seen for quite some time. So we've got the illness, number one, first and foremost, we've got the illness. Number two, we've got the tension between the workforce and Tyson, and that's creating a lot of anxiety around the plant. Fortunately, real quick, CJ, Columbus Junction is back up and running. So we're moving some hogs from Waterloo down to Columbus Junction. Other hogs that were supposed to be delivered into Waterloo, some of those hogs are going to Spirit Lake. But obviously, you can't handle all the overflow from Waterloo Tyson in the other plants around the state.
I want to go ahead and bring in John Nalivka with Sterling Marketing now. And John, this is a bigger conversation about the protein sector and how we're handling this entire situation, correct?
Yeah, and I would certainly reiterate and second what Chip was saying, because it becomes a bigger issue when you've in a relatively rural area, and here you've got one of the largest plants with that's a large labor force in that plant. That's a significant share of the population of that area, and it becomes a huge deal. This Chip, as you said, that's about 4% of our total hog slaughter capacity. We can slaughter. My estimate is we can slaughter about 100 or almost 500,000, market hogs a day. And we've expanded that capacity significantly over the last 2 years. And that's kind of been the story in the industry, is these new plants coming online, expanding capacity. And of course, a lot of that's been done towards our export markets. But I think, one point I want to make is that we, as this process has gone on, we've had closures, we've had slowdowns, we've had closures that have then become slowdowns. Yeah. It's a very dynamic situation that is changing constantly. I've been updating every day and sending out a list to my clients on where we're at and the current status, but that sometimes becomes a twice a day, update. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that you say, we say plant closure, and that's going to change. That's not permanent. But I think one thing that we can look towards, those plant closures do become slowdowns, and the slowdowns will be the normal course of business, for a while, because it's important to the packers. There's two main priorities in those plants: food safety and worker safety.
Yep.
And both are very, very important, and it takes both to make that plant operate.
Yep.
Chip.
So the other point I wanted to make. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to jump in here and say, John, Chip, obviously, as we continue to deal with this, that slowdown starts to back up hogs on the farm. And that's where we're starting to see people running out of room as they expect to be moving hogs out, but yet they're having to hold them as long as they can.
Yeah. Guys are doing some different things out there. They may be doubling up some of the capacity in houses. I don't think there's a whole lot of that going on right now, but they're adjusting rations. I mean, once those hogs hit about 250 pounds, I've been told that they go to straight corn and maybe even a coarse grind on that corn, crank down the doors on the feeders, make them work a little harder. This one I find interesting. Turn the temperature up in the barn by a degree per day.
Yep.
Doing it at a pace that doesn't put the health of the animals at risk. But what they're trying to do is stimulate summer as quick as they can.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anything they can do, and of course,
it's a whole different.
Go ahead.
As I say, it's a whole different situation than a feedlot with cattle. Those cattle can stand there and eat.
Yep.
When you have hogs in that finishing barn, with that process going through and bringing feeder pigs in, you just can't do that. I mean, it's sorry.
Yeah. John makes a good point. You can't do it in a finishing house. You can't do it like you've got a feedlot of cattle out there. From the time that pig is born, you can pretty much schedule when it's going to the packing plant.
Right.
And when it is that synchronized, and when you disrupt that synchronization, it like you were saying, Clinton, it creates a backlog and bunches hogs up.
And obviously we've got, young hogs that are on their way to market or trying to find barn space. And, that's the next crisis that, of course, we're going to have to deal with as we kind of slow things up. China's still dealing with African swine fever, so it's not like, there's still going to be a demand for these hogs somewhere, but if you can't get them to a processor and get them processed, then obviously we have some other issues. Hey, Chip, let me read another story that's been breaking here today. The news not any better right now for ethanol. New production numbers just released. Ethanol production now down to just 563,000 barrels per day. That's more than 46% under this time last year. It's a drop from last week's 570,000 barrels per day. And we have seen stocks rise to a new record high, 27.7 million barrels, or a 52-day supply. Your take on that, Chip, as we continue to see ethanol take some heat here?
Yeah, we were seeing the production pace drop by 160,000 barrels per day, and even more. So we've got a slowdown in the decline. I hope that makes sense. We've got a slowdown in the decline in production, and it's a week-to-week drop of 7,000 barrels per day is not that much of a change. Plus, it feels like we basically maxed out our storage capacity. We thought we were going to get there at about 27 million barrels. Here we are at 27.7 million barrels. I don't know if we can push it that much higher. I think we're bottoming out on the production side right now. And when you look at some of the corn supply out there around the country that is close to the ethanol plants, being stored in the outside piles, that is starting to get cleaned up right now. So that corn is moving to the ethanol facilities, even as we've got the bin doors that have been slammed shut out on the farm at the on-farm storage.
Real quick, why don't we bring back John Nalivka there from Sterling Marketing. John, As we kind of wrap up this whole conversation about the impact to the protein sector, let's talk about cow-calf, because we've already seen these things start to work their way down the supply chain to the farm gate here.
Yeah, I think that, this whole COVID-19 situation, these plant closures and the entire overall scenario, I think that, you got to think about the feedlot. The feedlot has been hit first, just like the fair to finish hog operation, because that feedlot guy is now faced with $95 cattle this week. And that was anticipation of $1.20 to $1.25 steers. So and those cattle are getting bigger. And so, in the short term, it certainly reduces the supply, beef on the potentially can go to the market. Long term, to think of those weights, those cattle getting bigger, there's going to be more beef production as we get down the road here a short way. So that implies, where's that going to leave prices, and I've already taken quite a bit off my price projections for this summer and going into the fourth quarter. I think we're looking, if you get down the road, I think we're looking to the end of the year, to the beginning of next year, before we start to see any sort of semblance of normality in this marketplace. But the cow-calf guy, obviously, if the feedlot's getting $95 per steers, guess what happens to feeder cattle? And they've got to continue those bids have gone down sharply, and that's going to go right down through the entire sector, through every class of cattle. But I would say this: if you've got a calf, and I've told many people this over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you've got to get to the point where you can think ahead on this calf crop, and how are you going to manage and market that calf crop that's on the ground right now, and because that's going to be very important. And I can get pretty optimistic about where we're getting down the road, with this year's calf crop and those markets. So it may not look, we'll get to this time next year, and it may not be, is likely not to be nearly as bleak as it's been over the last 2 months.
Right. John, hey, if I could jump in here real quick, Clinton.
Yeah.
One of the things that the feed yards are having a really difficult time dealing with is that $95 cash or fat cattle bid, and they're looking at record boxed beef prices. They can't put the two together.
Well, you're asking me a difficult question, Chip. I agree. Right. I mean,
that's why I'm here, John.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not easy.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they not. No, you're right. I mean, we see the box beef. The boxes go, sharply higher, but at the same time, you've got, trying to match the bid, and you've got to get that back to the plant. What's the demand for the cattle?
Right.
And working those cattle through the plant.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess I've, as you and I've talked many times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's absolute proof that there are two different markets in the industry. You got your you got your cattle market, and you got your beef market. Right now, demand for beef is solid. It's rock solid at the retail level, not at the restaurant level. And when the restaurant level does come back in and the food service comes back in, we're going to see another surge in the demand as they try to restock their freezers and their meat cases and get back to business. But in the meantime, we're feeding into a retail system right now from a system that is all concerned about labor and keeping the plants open. And because of that, demand for cattle is off because you don't have the capacity. It's one of the strangest situations. I've never seen a separation like this.
Well, and it's always difficult. Over the last 35 years, I've tried to explain how this supply chain works.
Yeah.
And at best, it's difficult. And now we've thrown this into it. You've got a labor situation. You're reducing your production. You're slowing down the line speed. You're taking shifts off. You're running one shift. You're putting separation between the people on the fab line in the plant. They're going through temperature monitors coming in the plant. you take all that and come back down and try to explain that to somebody down at the ranch. Here's what's going on up there. It's costing money, and they're trying to manage 2,000 employees or more. And that's not the same thing. And the connection is totally falling apart,
Yeah.
And I think
There's nothing pretty going on.
It's going to improve. No.
Yeah.
And
I think,
and again, I'd say,
I think, fellas, let's leave it there. It's a big conversation we're still going to be talking about here for the next, I would say, 2 or 3 months. Hey, Chip, I might end with this question for you. As we work to the other side of this summer and we try to get a little further down the line here in agriculture, what's on your radar? What's top of mind here as we try to flip over this coronavirus outbreak and the way it's impacting ag?
You asking me to look 90 days out right now when I'm not even looking 90 minutes out?
I know. I mean, how do you, and I know John was talking about, what to do with this calf crop, the one that's hitting the ground right now.
Oh, it's a great point.
It's a great point. I mean, what are we going to do? How do we look ahead for our farmers here who are out in the tractor planting right now and getting ready to put the crop in the ground?
Yeah, the fact that they're out there and putting another crop in the ground is all the evidence that you need that it does continue on. I mean, farming does continue on. It's not going to slow down. The calendar is not going to, the earth isn't going to stop spinning. We need to keep doing what we do when we need to do it. And that right there should be enough incentive to be looking forward and making plans for what you're going to be doing in the next 30, 60, 90 days. You ought to be thinking about what you're going to do with that crop when it's mature and we're out there and harvesting it. You got to be making all those plans right now, and you need to do it with the backdrop of all the uncertainty of COVID-19 and how it might be influencing your decisions later.
Right.
There are no easy answers to this, Clinton. And if you think, I'm just going to do this like I've always done it, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but there's no easy answers.
Yeah, and I think that's the space that we all find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you both for being here today and having a heart-to-heart conversation as we try to work through some of this and update everybody on what's happening with the coronavirus outbreak. And remember, of course, we'll continue to bring you the latest coverage. You can go to agweb.com/coronavirus. Chip's talking about it each and every day on AgriTalk. Make sure you tune in there. Thank you all for watching. And don't forget, if you're out there working and continuing to farm on, as Chip said, you can hashtag farm on as you post to social media, or you can text farm on to 31313. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.
This season, rather than madness, opening days, or taking a break, the world is frozen, silenced by quarantines, isolated by distance, and edging on panic. But while work for you may have changed, out here, we're still going strong. Our season is underway. The crops will get planted, the livestock will be fed, and your food will continue to be grown, just like it's been for generations. There's plenty to worry about. But out here, social distancing is our specialty. American agriculture farms on, today and tomorrow, for our family and yours.